What if the future wasn't a complete mystery? What if someone saw it all, years in advance, and left behind a warning? In 1999, a strange hand-drawn comic book was quietly published in Japan. It seemed like nothing more than a dream journal. But then, its predictions began coming true, one by one. Now, only the final, most terrifying prophecy remains. A prophecy for 5 a.m. on July 5th, 2025. A date that is no longer in the distant future. The question is, what did the author see? And should we be listening? Before we open those doors together, hope you've been sleeping okay lately. It really matters. And if you're still with me, maybe hit like and subscribe. We're only getting started. Our story begins not in 1999, but on March 11th, 2011. That was the day Japan was shaken to its very core. A catastrophic 9.0 magnitude earthquake struck off its northeastern coast, triggering a tsunami of unimaginable power. The world watched in stunned horror as images emerged of a high-tech nation being swallowed by the sea. Entire towns were wiped from the map. Over 15,000 people were killed. In the days of confusion and grief that followed, a strange memory surfaced on Japanese online forums. A memory of a long-forgotten comic book. Someone remembered a cheap self-published manga from 12 years earlier titled The Future I Saw. As people scrambled to find the few existing copies, a collective chill ran through the nation. There, recorded in rough pencil sketches, was a scene that mirrored the events of March 11th with haunting accuracy. It depicted seawater flooding streets and massive waves crashing inland. Even more chilling, the cover of the book seemed to feature the numbers 3.11, a cryptic warning of the date that no one could have possibly understood back in 1999. The coincidence was too detailed, too precise to be ignored. A frantic search began. Readers turned every page, examined every sketch, and analyzed every handwritten note in the margins, as if deciphering a code sent from the future. And they soon discovered something even harder to believe. The book contained a total of 15 prophetic dreams, and according to their tally, 12 and a half of them had already come true. As the manga became a viral phenomenon, one question dominated every conversation. Who was the person behind it? Who was this prophet? But the search for answers only led to a deeper mystery. The author was known only by a single ambiguous pen name, Tatsuki. There was no verifiable information about her. The publisher's address was a dead end. They had no contact records for the person who had created the book over a decade prior. In a world where every piece of information is just a click away, the fact that a person could remain a complete ghost for more than 20 years made the story even more compelling. Tatsuki's name spread like wildfire. Countless fake accounts began to appear on social media. Imposters claimed to be the real author, releasing new so-called prophetic dreams and sowing chaos. Some people dismissed the whole thing as a premeditated hoax. Others suspected that Tatsuki wasn't an individual at all, but an organization or a front for some hidden force deliberately manipulating public belief. The mystery was a perfect storm of modern folklore and online speculation. Then, just as the fever surrounding the prophecies began to surge once more, the impossible happened. In October of 2023, Tatsuki returned. She broke more than 2 decades of silence by re-releasing her original book. But this time, it was a complete edition, filled with new details and explanations. The book, still bearing the title The Future I Saw, had transformed from a cryptic collection of sketches into a comprehensive document of everything she had witnessed in her dreams. And in this new edition, Tatsuki finally revealed a few things about herself. She was born on December 2nd, 1954, in Kanagawa Prefecture, and now lives in the port city of Yokohama. She described her childhood as unremarkable, just like millions of other Japanese children in the post-war era. She loved to paint, enjoyed singing, and was a sensitive, dreamy child. But she had one secret, one thing that set her apart. Beginning at the age of 9, she started having dreams unlike those of ordinary people. In these dreams, she was often visited by a guide, a wise old man with silver white hair and gentle eyes. He would appear beside her and speak to her in a calm, slow voice, telling her about things that had not yet come to pass. They would walk together under the moonlight in her dreamscapes, and the old man would whisper of events she would only come to understand many years later. The first dream that truly unsettled her came in 1976. It was a November night. Tatsuki dreamt of a man singing on stage, bathed in bright lights. She saw him suddenly collapse, the lights blurring and fading around him as the crowd gasped in shock. She knew immediately who the man was, Freddie Mercury, the legendary lead singer of Queen. In 1976, this vision was absurd. Freddie Mercury was at the absolute peak of his career. His health was vibrant. His powerful voice filled stadiums across the world. To predict his death would have been met with ridicule. But Tatsuki didn't brush it off. She quietly sketched the dream in her journal, documenting every detail she could remember. 15 years later, on November 24, 1991, the world was stunned by the news. Freddie Mercury had passed away. As television channels aired special reports and newspapers printed his image on their front pages, Tatsuki opened her old journal. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. It was the first time she felt truly afraid of her own mind, afraid that her dreams were no longer just dreams. But what sent a deeper chill down her spine was a small detail. In her 1976 journal, she had drawn a small frame, a simple sketch of a film crew shooting a movie about the deceased artist. Now, on the news, she saw documentary footage of fans preparing to make a biographical film in his memory. The resemblance was disturbingly precise. Another dream occurred on August 31, 1992. She saw herself walking down a long, elegant corridor with light pouring in through towering windows. At the end of the hall hung a painting of a blonde woman holding a child. The word Diana was written across the canvas. In the next moment, the dream was shattered by a blinding light, the sound of crashing metal, and the cries of many people. 5 years later, to the day, on August 31, 1997, the world was again left in shock. Princess Diana had died in a car crash in Paris. Once again, Tatsuki's journal had recorded the moment years earlier, captured in simple, haunting sketches. From 1995 onward, the prophetic dreams became more frequent, and their scale grew immensely. They began to touch on natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, events far beyond the control of humankind. It was this growing sense of urgency that compelled her to create the book the world would one day rediscover. On a cold winter night, January 2, 1995, Tatsuki dreamed of the old man with silver hair once again. In the dream, he led her to a strange land where the ground had split wide open. The air was thick with the choking scent of stone and dust. Tatsuki awoke with a powerful sense of foreboding. She opened her journal, carefully recorded the date, sketched the scene of the devastated landscape, and beneath it, wrote a single, chilling note. Something will rupture in 15 days. Exactly 15 days later, on January 17, 1995, the Great Hanshin earthquake, also known as the Kobe earthquake, struck Japan. Nearly 6,500 lives were lost. Tens of thousands of homes collapsed. At that moment, Tatsuki no longer had any doubt. She could no longer convince herself that what she was seeing was mere coincidence. She believed with absolute certainty that the future was sending her signals. It was this conviction that led her to publish The Future I Saw in 1999. But immediately after its release, she disappeared again, perhaps hoping the story would end there. It would have, had it not been for one more dream. A dream so vivid, so urgent, that it compelled her to break more than 2 decades of silence. On a July night in 2021, Tatsuki awoke with a start, her heart racing, cold sweat clinging to her forehead. She had dreamed she was standing alone in a vast field of water, beneath a sky the color of ash. She saw the sea south of Japan begin to bubble and churn. Then, from the depths of the ocean, 2 enormous dragons emerged, their bodies twisting and writhing as if they were tearing at the Earth's crust. An explosion followed. Then an apocalyptic silence as the land was swallowed by the sea. She realized this was a continuation of an older vision, but it was now far clearer, far more violent. She could not remain silent any longer, and so, in 2023, she re-released her book, this time with a stark warning about the one catastrophe that had not yet come. In this ultimate dream, she stood at an immense height, so high she could see the entire expanse of the sea from Japan to the Philippines, spread out beneath her like a living map. At first, the ocean was calm, but then massive pockets of gas began to rise from the ocean floor, bubbling up like giant cauldrons. It was the unmistakable sign of a supervolcano on the verge of erupting. But what seared itself into her memory was the sight of the two enormous dragons. They coiled beneath the water's surface, their forms circling the epicenter of the eruption, as if guarding a terrible power hidden beneath. Then, in an instant, a massive column of water and fire burst from the sea, tearing through the sky and unleashing a tsunami beyond anything the human mind could conceive. Tatsuki described watching, frozen, as waves 3 times taller than those of the 2011 disaster came crashing toward the shore, dragging with them clouds of dust, vehicles, buildings, and millions of people. But in the chaos, her dream showed more than just an end. After the wave, a new land began to rise from the water, like an ancient being waking from a 1,000-year slumber. Wet soil and stone heaved upward, forming a rugged, raw, untouched continent. And in that moment, Tatsuki knew with certainty that this new landmass would connect Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the Philippines into one continuous stretch of Earth. And what makes the dream all the more chilling is this. Tatsuki had seen the exact date it would happen. It was written clearly in her vision, 5 a.m., July 5th, 2025. While it's easy to dismiss this as fantasy, the scientific community acknowledges that, while the probability is low, the event is theoretically possible. Japan lies on the Pacific Ring of Fire, a hotbed of tectonic activity and home to the highest density of underwater volcanoes in the world. In 2013, an underwater volcano erupted off the coast of Japan's Nishinoshima Island, creating a brand new island that expanded and merged with the main island. The two dragons Tatsuki saw in her dream also curiously align with the location of two major tectonic plates, the Philippine Sea Plate and the Pacific Plate. An eruption at their intersection could, in theory, push the seafloor upward. Perhaps the final, most unsettling piece of the puzzle is another dream Tatsuki recorded. In it, a sound erupts from deep within the earth, so powerful she felt her spine shudder in her sleep. The clock in her dream read exactly 5 o'clock. She stepped outside her home to find a scene of total devastation. Roads were shattered. Buildings had their lower floors torn away. A grand bridge was snapped in half. But the detail that haunted her and her readers was this. She was wearing a short-sleeved shirt. The 2011 tsunami occurred in March, when Japan is still bitterly cold. Her dream of this ultimate destruction bore the elements of summer, and the date she saw for the final prophecy, July 5th, is in the middle of summer. As we move closer to July 5th, 2025, Tatsuki's story leaves us with a profound and unsettling question. Is this a work of fiction, a string of unbelievable coincidences, or a genuine warning that has traveled through time? What you choose to believe is up to you. But her lifetime of visions, culminating in one final, specific date, is a mystery that is hard to ignore. If you want to continue exploring stories that challenge what we know, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Thank you for listening.